For more than 100 years, the Haley Red Family Foundation has proudly supported Auburn University scholarships, investing in students' dreams and brighter futures. For over 25 years, we've also stood beside the Sheriff's Girls Ranch, helping young women find hope and opportunity. The Haley Red Family Foundation, building generations of success.
Welcome in again, everybody, to the Terry Bowden Show on the Auburn Undercover Podcast. I'm your co-host, Ronnie Sanders, and Terry, good to be with you today.
Good to be with you. Another wild weekend of football, maybe the wildest yet in regard to games that you thought one team was going to win and the underdog ended up winning. It was just it started out that way and all the way through to the very end, from Friday night till the end of Saturday at midnight. Great football games. A bunch of them went right down to the wire. And if any of you fans out there are Auburn people, if you're betting on games, you're probably losing a lot, because I can't figure it out. It's pretty tough to figure out who's going to win and by how much. That's for sure.
It was a wild weekend.
Yeah.
What were your before we get into that, what were your thoughts on the Auburn game?
Well, let me see. And I'll talk about the Auburn game first, but let me say this. I also want to thank Tom Haley. Every time we get on, I want to remember to thank the Haley Red Family Foundation. They sponsor our show. Tom Haley, a great friend of mine, a great friend of Auburn. I've lived in Auburn, went to Auburn, loves Auburn. He does a great job. His family has given scholarships to the university. They continue to support the program. When I go to Mountain Lake Martin, I'll stay. I rent a place out there from him, and just want to thank him a lot for allowing us to put this show on once a week. And he's got a million convenience stores. He's got his hand about everything in Auburn. I think he's been there for a long time. Built my house about 35 years ago in Auburn.
Great house too.
Yeah, it was a great. I loved it. All right, the Auburn game. Here's my thoughts. I mean, you play a top 10 team on the road in one of the toughest stadiums in America, and you only lose by 6. Mm-hmm. I mean, you ought to be feeling pretty good, or not so bad. It ought to be one of those things. Well, you know what? That's not terrible. But then after you watch the game and you look at some of the problems that persist, it worries you. There's some things offensively about Auburn that begin to worry you. And I'm not saying something that the coaches don't know and the Auburn fans don't see, but there's some concerns, I think, going on right now. 5 games into the season, and then the last 2 especially that we had losses, you're beginning to see the same things happen again and again. And I think that's starting to cause some concern. And that's something, as we get into the show after our guest, we want to talk about it in depth. But it does offer a bit of concern. But I'm telling you, it was a heck of a week of football. We'll get back to Auburn after we bring on our guest, Larry Fedora, and talk to him a little bit. But it was an upset week. I mean, it was a game of upsets for a lot of y'all. And I looked at all the games, because I cover games and do a lot of work with Sports Grid Network and a couple other shows. And, of course, they're all talking about not just win or loss, but the spread. Mm-hmm. But, I picked out 8 games. I picked out the underdog. The underdog ended up winning. Friday night, who'd have thought FSU and UVA did that? All of a sudden, it's like, all that good fortune FSU had, they go lose to they're favored by 7, and they lose to Virginia at home. At Virginia. All of a sudden, there now people down there are starting to wonder. That was a big upset. And the crazy thing is, when I watch games and analyze them, you think of a fluke, an underdog, an upset. I always think about an upset being, if something crazy happens and the better team gets beat. Well, you realize that the last drive of the first half, and the first 2 drives of the second half, Virginia drove over 75 yards, over 12 plays 3 times in a row. That's not a fluke now. That's not a mistake. That's something wrong, and that scares you. So anyway, that was a big win, and it kind of messes up Florida State as they go on in their level. But it wasn't just right there. Alabama beating Georgia. Georgia was favored by, 3 points, and lost at home for the first time in 33 games. And so that shakes it up a little bit in regard to that game. for y'all. The Georgia Tech was undefeated. They had to beat Wake Forest in overtime. I think Wake Forest went for 2 on the first time, and Georgia Tech saves their 5-0 record. And as far as people that you might eventually see in the playoffs, that's one you might see. Arkansas losing to Notre Dame. We all thought that would happen, I think. But the point spread, 56 to 13. That's what got Sam Pittman fired, I guess, by losing so bad. And even when a coach after the game in his press conference says, I would be mad at me. I think that was his comment. I love Sam Pittman, and I thought they played good. But I thought going into that game, here's what happens. They play great, and they lose a game on the last drive, fumbling going in to win the game. Then last week, they lose again, fumble the last drive going in to win the game. Now, they could be undefeated. And so I said, they're going to be down. Your players have a hard time getting up again, and they pretty much couldn't get up. And that'll be an interesting job now. There'll be a lot of people wanting that job at Arkansas because everybody feels like, if Arkansas will give to the NIL and jump in the portal, you can get pretty good pretty quick,
And certainly get competitive, Bobby Petrino may end up with that job. From an Auburn standpoint, Travis Williams got fired. Marcus Woodson got fired yesterday. So it's Deke Williams. He's not or Deke Adams. He's not an Auburn guy, but Petrino pretty much cleaned the defensive staff out yesterday.
Yeah, you go down the list. So LSU they were underdogs by 1.5. Mm-hmm. But I thought Ole Miss outplayed them. I thought the Ole Miss offense, LSU's offense is not as productive as it needs to be. No. Nussmeier is supposed to be a Heisman candidate. They're not putting points on the board, and you can't be a national championship team and not be good on both sides of the ball. Everybody at LSU says we hired you to take us to the SEC championship or to the playoffs, and we haven't gone yet. And we got to be better. And so that's a concern for them. Their offense not being very productive. And we'll talk about Tennessee and Mississippi State. What a heck of a game! That was a great game. Was a great game. Of course, that's the underdog. Now, when I say the underdog won, you got to understand there was a 7.5 point spread. So Mississippi State, if you're a bettor, you won the game because they only lost by 1. And buddy, they took it to Tennessee. Interesting to note, the head coach Levy at Mississippi State was the offensive coordinator for Josh Heupel at UCF. So they have the same style, but I look at all the different teams around the country. Mississippi State's probably the most improved team in the country in 1 year. All levels, all conferences, they have done a great job, and they continue to get good, and that was pretty impressive. And then outside of our conference, I think Oregon beats Penn State. James Franklin, who did a great job at Vandy, he's starting to get that reputation, can't win the big one. Yep. And this was another big one. He was favored by 3 and lost to Oregon at the end and played a great game. These games were all won or lost in the last series or overtime, and they were great to watch. And then the other one, USC in top 25, Southern Cal goes to Illinois after Illinois got beat last week. This is what's crazy. Got beat 63-10 by Indiana last week. They come back and play Southern Cal. Southern Cal's favored in the game, and they beat Southern Cal with a walk-off field goal. It's hard to predict those kind of games, but pretty good week of football to watch. And I don't know much about this gambling stuff, except I do this. I've learned if you're a novice or you're a beginner, pick the underdog a lot. If you're not sure and it's close, the underdog, if you win the game, you win, or if you don't lose by the amount of points, you still win. And so it seems to me that's why you see a lot of these underdog against the spread. But it's interesting. And for those of y'all who are fooling around with the SEC odds, what are the odds of who winning the SEC now? FanDuel. I looked at FanDuel to see what the odds are on that game in the SEC. Alabama's now leading at plus 270, and then followed by Texas at plus 280, and then Georgia at 600, Ole Miss at plus 650. And then the last two is Texas A&M and Oklahoma at 1,000. That just means if you put $100 on the game and they win, you win that extra amount, the total amount on that. So that's kind of the odds. It changes every week. It might be a good if you're a gambler, I guess it might. Those are pretty good numbers to take Georgia or Ole Miss because the money return is so good. because that's kind of what happens. I guess people bet on these things every week, and it changes the odds on who people think are going to win the conference. But it just goes to show you it changes a lot in those kind of things. But and Miami is obviously way ahead in the ACC, predicted to win the ACC. But those will be pretty good. Some things that we touch on before we get back to talk to Larry Fedora, and looking forward to talking to Larry before we get back to that Auburn game in depth.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing, man?
Doing good.
Larry, how you doing, man?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm kind of semi-retired. I guess I'm retired. We either get retired or somebody retires us, one or the other. You know,
that's for sure. That's for sure.
Well, I'm a little bit older than you, a few years older than you, and guess I'll be 70 in February, and so I'm retired from coaching on the sideline. Tommy hung up the cleats at 55. You know, Tommy said, "That's it. I've had enough. I'm going to enjoy life," and he has. Then my dad probably went too long. Went to 81. And so, what do you? I knew you went to the New Orleans Breakers. I knew you went to that USFL league or whatever. Whatever. Are you through with that now?
I'm done. I'm 63 now, and I'm done completely. I see Tommy down in Destin every once in a while.
Yep.
You know, he seems to be doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's a whole different experience. I guess I keep my fill of football by doing these podcasts, and I was telling Ronnie that picking who's going to win a game isn't as hard, but you give somebody the spread.
Yeah.
Shoot, it's hard to pick those games. I wouldn't want to make a living on it. I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't want to make a living.
Vegas definitely knows what they're doing, don't they?
They sure do. I've never seen the bank. They don't lose. That's for sure in those games. And all of that. What do you? Let me ask you this. And I was going to some things just generally speaking. The NIL's new. The portal, that stuff's kind of new. I was at ULM when it started, and it really affected the ability to manage teams. But where do you see it changing the game? What have you seen so far that you see how it changes the game?
Well, as you look across college football right now, the biggest thing I see is parity. I mean, it doesn't look like there's anybody out there that's dominant. It looks like anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday. And I guess that's what the fans wanted. That's what they got, So it's, it's almost impossible to manage a roster right now.
Right.
I mean, with the way the transfer portal is, who cares about the money? It's great. They're making some money, good. But being able to transfer is multiple times. I mean, it's making it impossible to manage a roster.
Yeah, and it's funny because I guess I would have thought maybe the rich will get richer, and I guess Ohio State that might have 20 or 30 million, they just get bigger. But I think as you do, I don't ever see the 2 or 3 teams that win by 20 every week, and the old days when you had these 2 or 3, they never lose except once in a while. I think of my dad back at FSU when they had all the talent. That doesn't exist anymore. When you see a Mississippi State, in 2 years, they've gone from not winning a conference game to about knocking off Tennessee because of the portal.
Yeah, again, if you buy the right players, you got a chance to win. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's the game has definitely changed. So it's and the guys that adjust to it best and just accept it, they're the ones that are having success.
And I see it week after week to see all those things happen and how it can affect. And now I think they've changed the rule again. It was that there were 2 windows, in December and January, and then back in the spring, and they've taken the spring portal window out, so you can't have that. And I can see why most of the powers don't want it as much because they don't want to lose a player. But it got voted out. But you know what? Tennessee wouldn't have Joey Aguilar if they hadn't have got the spring portal window. And so I guess it can work both ways. I don't know if it – I think if I'm I don't know if I'd want it to happen. I guess it's good not to have that one because, again, it's hard enough to manage your roster.
Yeah, I mean, when you have 2 times that guys can jump in and jump out, it makes it almost impossible to manage your roster. And I think everybody figured that out. Now at least it's down to 1. You got at least got a chance.
And that always seems to be the case in that case. I was looking at, and again, I don't know to get too much into the North Carolina situation, but they made the big switch with, I think, 70 portal transfers they brought in. I don't know what you think about. Does the what you think about that move that they made, the direction where they're going, and can you do it at North Carolina with that kind of portal transfers and that kind of, I guess, money that I don't think you probably saw that kind of money that they're paying that group.
No, we didn't see that kind of money, but you know how that goes. It's always the next coach, and the one after him will even have more money. That's just the way it works. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they're going out there, and what they wanted to do was have the splash that Dion created at Colorado. And I think that happened. I think they've gotten a lot of press, whether that press was good or bad. They got a lot of press over the move to go with Belichick. The jury's out on whether he's going to have success or not, and we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I've kind of said, basically, I don't know what his motivations are. Is it to continue to build a champion, or is it just to keep your family, your brother, the son's opportunity? And to be honest with you, they all could be part of the reason. I don't know that one to be the case for sure, but it'll be interesting to watch. North Carolina, I've always wondered when you were there and won so many games, and Mac Brown, his best years, can they be a national contender? Do they do enough in support of the program? And I've always said it's hard in a basketball school to get everybody to jump on. Indiana, North Carolina, can they build a national championship when people get ready for January as much as they do August?
Well, I tell you what, Indiana, it looks like they figured it out. I mean, they're pouring a lot of money into football, and it's there's been a pretty good return on their investment, I would say.
Yeah.
And so, I think it can be done at North Carolina. It's just, you can't just give lip service to committing. Right. You got to do it. And to do it, you're going to have to put up a lot of money, and you're going to have to put up a lot of money every year. It's not like you can make a 1-year investment and think it's going to happen, because you got to buy more players the next year. You got to buy you got to keep them. If you got good players, you got to keep them. And then you got to go buy more players. So it's a never ending, I don't know it's just never ending.
I was flipping through for YouTube yesterday, and I saw one of my dad's favorite quotes, and it was very simple. He who has the best players wins. Some people are like, this coach has got something special. That coach has got something special. I don't care if it goes back to the days when we probably may have done things we shouldn't have to get players, but it's always he who has the best players most of the time, because coaches are too good on both sides of the ball. There are too many good coaches out there.
Yeah, there's great coaches out there at every program. And if you think you're going to go in and out coach somebody every week, that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good football coaches. It's about those Jimmies and Joes. It always has been. I mean, look at, and go back to North Carolina, look at Belichick, look at his record as a head coach without Tom Brady as his quarterback, and look at him with us. It's a huge difference.
Yeah. Again, I thought about something that's more concerned to the hearts of Auburn people, since we're on the Auburn Undercover Network. I was a play caller as a head coach, and I'm pretty sure you built you're an offensive person just like me and the rest of us Bowdens. We built our backgrounds running offense, even playing the spread. And of course, I started out 21 personnel. You may have started as a player back before we got to the spread. But Hugh is facing that dilemma, I think. How difficult was it for you to be a head coach and continue to call plays, or did you make the move to transition it away to other people, or how did you handle that situation?
Yeah, so I started off being heavily involved in all the play calls. And then eventually I got to where I trusted my coordinator. We were on the same page and started giving him more rope. And eventually he was able to take it over completely. But every time you had a change over in coordinators, you had to go back to doing, getting back more involved. And so, but eventually you build trust in that guy and you let him take over. And so that's pretty much the way I did it throughout my career.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the way I did towards the end. I don't think you can hire a good coordinator anymore. Obviously, the salary for coordinators is huge, but also they want to know, am I going to run the offense? Are you going to interfere with me? And that's where, when I was at ULM, I hired Rich Rodriguez, and who calls the plays when you hire Rich Rodriguez. I said, dang it, I guess I'm pretty much through calling plays.
Yeah, that's right. You bring Rich Rod in, he's going to call the plays. And you're right. But there's any coordinator out there that's worth the salt is going to want to call the plays, and he doesn't want interference. He's made his reputation on doing what he does, and he doesn't need you jumping in and trying to take over.
Yeah.
How important?
Go ahead, Ronnie. Go ahead, bud.
How important was it? Cap was Chris Kapilovic was the offensive line coach, I believe, your whole time you were head coach. How important was it from a continuity standpoint to have a line coach, even when you cycle through coordinators.
Yeah, that was critical. I thought so because one, Cap and I were on the same page. Mm-hmm. We'd been together the whole time, and so no matter who we brought in as the coordinator, I knew that the offensive line, he was going to be able to help the guy, and because we were going to run the offense that we ran. I was never looking for a coordinator to come in and just take over and run his own offense. I was really looking more for a play caller to run our offense, and so having our O-line coach there year after year was critical for our success in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, as a head coach, I know because I'm like you. I always stayed involved with the offense. So line coach, defensive coordinator, I got to have those two. I got to have because I can't step in and tell them. And I had Trick at Auburn when I was at Auburn and other ones, and I felt good about having a guy that I knew could handle that in the way because I can stay on top of the offense, but I couldn't do that. Yeah, which I guess.
What was your first year at Auburn there?
Well, 93.
Okay, so I came in the spring of 94. I was an assistant at Baylor University back then. Ron West and I came out there and for spring ball and watched spring ball there for a few days. So we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, right. I ended up hiring Ron at UL. He was with me the last 3 years I was here. Talked to him about a month ago. One of my favorite guys.
Big Daddy.
Big Daddy. Big Daddy was with Tommy at Clemson, and I love him to death. He's old school like us. And he loves it. He's at Swanee right now coaching. Yeah. He's loving coaching football. I think Swanee.
Yeah, he's with Andy McCollum, I think.
Yeah, Andy McCollum. Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. And let me ask you this because I think Auburn's going through this, and I know Hugh's just driving him crazy. They are having problems with sacks. They had 9 or 10 against Oklahoma. They had 5 more against A&M. And I look at it and I say, okay, I've stood by. I learned a lot standing behind the offense while plays are being called during practice. Sure. Is the quarterback holding on to the ball too long? The fans all say, well, the line's not any good. Well, he's holding too long, or he gets stuck up in the, or he crow hops up too close to the guards. And there are so many things that can go on. And then all of a sudden, holding and penalties are a problem and poor Hugh is facing sacks. He's facing penalties by the offensive lineman, and then not being able to run the ball. Of all those things, that leads to one kind of leads to the other, third and longs. But there's a lot of things you have to look at that aren't just the linemen aren't good enough.
Yeah, Coach, I kind of flipped back and forth. I was watching a lot of games the other day, but there were a couple things that were just critical. I mean, you're 0 for 15 on critical downs. I mean,
right.
3rd and 4th downs, you didn't convert a single one. I mean, you're not going to win football games that way, and when you were throwing the ball, I think it was less than 4 yards a catch.
Yeah, everything's short.
Yeah, and then you can't run the football. So, I don't know if it all goes on the offensive line. I can tell you this. I had 2 offensive line coaches in my career as an offensive coordinator and then as a head coach, Phil Wickline and Chris Kapilovic. And I always told them, if you turn somebody just flat ass loose up front, that's on you. If you can at least get in front of them, then the sack's on the quarterback. Yeah. He's got to get the ball out of his hands. And I've always believed that. So, I was going to put more pressure on the quarterback than I was the offensive lineman. Because I think they got a pretty tough job, and I was fortunate to have 2 really good coaches doing coaching.
I looked at Auburn's game last against Texas A&M. I thought half the sacks were blocks that they weren't made. They should have made the block, and the other half he was patting the ball too much and holding on just a little too much. And then the sacks, you got to get rid of the football. And you can't, if you hold on too long, there's not much the lineman can do as well in that regard. But I know Auburn I think they had 58 yards rushing 2 weeks ago. I don't know if they had, how many yards of rushing they have this week, Ron? I don't think they got 58 this week. No, it was like in the 20s or 30s this year. I just know that it goes to, if you don't run the ball at all, then it's going to be 3rd and longs. And if you're 3rd and longs, you're not going to protect very well. So it all goes together.
Yeah, as a play caller, Coach, I mean, when you get into that phase where you're going into the game and you're wanting to be able to run the football,
right?
And all of a sudden, every time you run the football, it's 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 9, and then you get behind the chains immediately. Eventually, you're going to quit running the football. You're going to hey, we're wasting our time running the football, and so then you're putting it in the air. And you put all the pressure on the offensive lineman. If the quarterback is sitting there patting the ball, that means receivers aren't getting open.
No,
And they got to get some separation, or the quarterback's not going to feel comfortable throwing football.
Yeah. How important is it to stick to? I mean, I feel like somebody at Auburn needs to be like Trickett and Wickline yelling into the headsets, "Hey, let's run the damn ball."
I mean, yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard, "Hey, let's run the damn ball." I'm like, let's get more than 2 yards.
Yeah, I know the answer. When I'm on a headset with Trickett, and we had Wickline on our show last week, and I've known him since we was back with you, and I've known him. I know what kind of answer I was going to get from them. Run the damn ball. Run the damn ball. I said, give me more than 1.2 or 1.8 yards of carry.
Well, I tell you what, the way Auburn's defense was playing the other night against A&M, right. Hey, you could have just run it 3 times and punted, and you're going to accomplishing the same thing. I mean, basically, right. So, and eating up more clock. I mean, so maybe you could have gone into the game plan and said, hey, you know what? We're not doing well on offense. Let's just run the football. Let's punt. Let's play defense like we're playing. And let's try to win the game on defense.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of fans don't understand is that all these factors go in. You can't. I never could go in a game and say I am going to run it 50% of the time. Well, if that defense, if all week they worked on stopping the run and you got 9 in the box every time, you better open up throwing the ball and then bring your runs into it when you can back them up a little bit, or vice versa. And you hope it bounces out. But yeah. I do believe when you got to make yourself run the football some, even when you don't get a lot. I think you got to make yourself. As a head coach, I know I was impatient as heck, And I think these coordinators today, they watch way too much video. Quick results, quick scores. Can't handle it if it's not happening quick. And sometimes football doesn't happen quick.
No, there's no doubt about it. I don't care what league you're in, you better be able to run the football. Now, that does not mean that when you're in a spread offense and they got 7 in the box, you're still going to bang your head against the wall and try to run it. I'm talking about when the numbers are there, you better be able to pick up 4 or 5 yards when you run the football.
I was just pulling up the box score here. I mean, Auburn had 8 runs to running backs. And if my memory doesn't fail me, I think 4 of those were on 3rd and long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just means what happened was he was like, he got frustrated. When we are running the ball, we're getting behind the chains. It's not effective. So he just got away from the run. Yeah,
because there were penalties. There were so many penalties were happening, and nothing goes. You flip your mind out when you have a holding penalty. If I'm going to have a closed door session after the game with a coach, it's going to be about holdings and things like that. If they're beyond what we can handle, we're going to try to. My dad used to tell me, you get what you demand, and that's not 100% true. But somewhere along the line, we got to understand and practice that some things are intolerable. And that's why, I don't know, sometimes we put a clock we let that horn go off if they hold on that ball too long in the backfield, and we're going to make them accountable for holding penalties. But all those things kind of go to make it a tough
I think
decision.
Auburn had 10 penalties the other day, and I think A&M had 13.
Yeah, A&M 13
penalties. I mean, it was both. There was 2 really good defenses playing in that game.
Yeah,
both, and I would say offensively, A&M just did enough to get it done.
They had a little over.
Auburn didn't.
Yeah, A&M had 200 yards rushing, but one play went for about 50, I think, and got Le'Veon Moss had one big run. But if you give it to him more times, you'll get a big run. But anyway, we're going to get to that in the second half of the show. Let me get one more question I've got. Back when we played, there wasn't any kind of playoff. It was just 2 teams got picked to play for the championship, and then it went to 4. And then now it's at 12, and they're talking 16. Does it get better if it gets to 16, or what do you have thought? I mean, I coached at Division II, Division I AA. I've seen 16 a lot, but I'm just wondering where it can go.
I mean, it's going to go where the money takes it. That's where it's going to go. Yeah. Whatever the most money is, that's where it's going to go. And I can't imagine, just I was never in the FCS. I've never been in a playoff type style and, at the end of the season, but I can only imagine the wear and tear that it has on your football team. I mean, those players, they start August 1 basically. And you go all the way to mid-January and you're playing every week, you get a couple weeks off. I mean, it's a lot of wear and tear on an 18, 19, 20-year-old young man's life.
I remember when now I go back to 80. My first year as a head coach was 83. We played 10-game schedules. And so the 16 didn't seem all that much because it might get you to 13, and then all of a sudden it was 11. Then it was 12. Then it was 12 and a conference championship game. And if you went to 16, all I've said was they somehow need to have conference championship games count as that first round, or you get a bye or something, because that's you're talking about getting to a ton of football.
Well, they're playing 14 or 15 now, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Larry, what do you make of these buyouts? I mean, you got Brian Kelly. I mean, hell, I know you probably would have liked a buyout like that. I mean, Jimbo got 70-something million. I just pulling up here. Brian Kelly's buyout, so almost 62 million. Lincoln Riley's buyout's 80 million. I mean, I'm not sure how much sense that makes, but
you know what that's more power to those coaches. I mean, with what they're having to go through these days to coach football and the expectation level, I mean, they ought to be getting paid like that. They really should. And because, I mean, look at Mike Gundy. He's been there 21 years and done a tremendous job there. And at the end, if you have a couple of bad seasons, you're gone. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's, and you understand that as a coach, but, I mean, you ought to be paid well.
Yeah, my dad, but he got let go. 34 years at Florida State. And that was back when there was a 1-year buyout. There wasn't any buyouts back then of that type. And
right.
I think Tom, and we all did. You go through that. No matter if you're in this business long enough, you're going to get a different AD, and he's got a different direction, or things aren't going to. People want to just have a change. Sam Pittman's one of my favorite guys, but I think his press conference, he said, I would be disappointed in me after that performance, and I think he probably knew what they were planning on doing, but. They were 2 games away from a fumble going in twice from winning those 2 games they lost, or this is all different story. But I've told my buddy, my lawyer, I had the same lawyer all the way through for 30 years, my dad and my brother. I wouldn't worry about how much I make. I just give me all my money in the buyout. Don't give me my money up front. I can live on that amount. Just give me that buyout, because eventually they get tired of everybody. They don't think they're going to when they make that contract. They're all happy and they'll give you whatever you want because you're never going to lose. Go for that big buyout if you're coaching nowadays.
Well, you think about it when you're as long as there as your dad was. I mean, who was a legend. I mean, eventually, they get tired of the same jokes. I mean, you only got so many. You come up with you got to make the tour every spring. And the alumni want to hear what's going on, and eventually you run out of stuff to tell them. I mean, it's the same thing year after year, and they get tired of it.
It's funny you're talking about buyouts. I mean, one thing that also has changed is assistant coaches at least have 2 and 3 year contracts now. I mean, I remember when we got let go, when Terry resigned at Auburn in '98. I'm walking down the hall and I'm a young guy, and it's my first. I had graduated. He'd hired me back, but I'm a young guy. I'd never been through this. I walk by Trickett's office and I'm kind of, Trickett calls me and says, "Hey, come in here and sit down and close the door." So I go in and I close the door. And he says, "Listen, if you're going to do this for a living, there's one thing you got to understand. There's 2 coaches, those that have been fired and those that are going to be. So you might as well just get the hell over it."
That's exactly right.
Hey, and another rule is when your assistants have their door closed, you better figure they're on the phone talking to somebody when that door's closed.
Yeah, and they're trying to take care of their own families. It's kind of dog eat dog at that point.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Hey, Larry, you remember when we were at Florida, Zook used to walk around saying, "Hey, there's 2 kinds of coaches' wives: great ones and X ones."
Oh man, I appreciate you coming on with us, Larry. I've enjoyed it. We go back, and I've watched you a long time. I'm sure we were all coaching a long time ago, and love the game. I know how much you love the game.
Yeah, I love the game, and you got in it for the same reasons you did. To have an impact on young men's lives. I mean, and positive impacts, and that's the legacy you leave. That's the reward you get. Is seeing those guys grow up, get married, have children, and be successful in life. And those are the things that make you happy. And I'll be honest with you, I've got no desire to get back into what's going on right now with the way it is. I don't think coaches can coach the way they need to coach to help young men, but it is what it is. And you're right. I mean, the whole deal. They'd tell you back in the day, hey, if you didn't like some place where you're at, you keep your mouth shut and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so hey, I don't necessarily like the way it's having to be done now. And so instead I'm just out, and I'm happy. I'm enjoying life right now.
Sounds good. I am too. Same deal. Well, appreciate you coming on the show with us. I appreciate you coming with us. And after Wickline last week and you, the memories are good.
Yeah, they are. A lot of good memories.
That's right.
Thanks, Larry.
You bet, man. Good to talk to you guys.
Good talking to you. I tell you, Ron, my great guy, Larry did a great job at Southern Miss. For those of you who don't go back far enough, he goes back all the way to Baylor, where he probably picked up a lot of his passing background with Art Briles back in the, Briles separated from Mike Leach and kind of spread people out and did the 4 wideouts with a little different angle, the Briles angle, which was a real line up on the sideline and spread them out 53 yards apart. And
Larry was at Baylor before Briles.
Okay, who was Larry with? He wasn't with. I thought he went with Briles.
No, he was with. I can't even remember now, but he was out there way early with Wickline.
Well, yeah, that was his first one. Okay, he goes all the way back there. I was thinking he was there, but he was with Wickline. Was he with that Wickline at Oklahoma State, or was he with?
Yes. So what happened? We get fired at Florida.
Yeah.
Larry and Wickline. And the ones of us that Ron offered a job, we were going to head to Illinois. I ended up going to Southern Miss, but Larry and Wickline go up to Illinois. Gundy gets the Oklahoma State job, and then Fedora's like, "Well, wait a minute." And so Gundy calls them, and they go out to Oklahoma State. And I picked them up when they flew back from Oklahoma State. I picked them both up at the airport.
How about that?
In Gainesville, and dropped them off at Larry's house. And I knew what they were going to do. I mean, it was, but because they were going to take care of them at Oklahoma State. I mean, I go up to Illinois and the facility was bad, and Ron didn't know how much money he had, and this and that and the other. And at Oklahoma State at that point, T. Boone Pickens had gotten involved. And
they were taking care of him.
They were taking care of him.
Yeah, and Holgerson was there, and that's the offensive style. That's more of the Mike Leach background, because Holgerson was with Mike Leach, and he added some running game to the spread offense, and that kind of came from there as Larry. But what I was getting to was he did an incredible job at Southern Miss too. People don't remember how successful he didn't just get lucky to get the North Carolina job. He was pretty dang hot in the success that he had at Southern Miss, and you were with him there, I think, at Southern Miss as well, weren't you?
Well, actually, we were together at Florida for 3 years.
Florida,
and
okay.
Ended up going to Southern Miss, and when Jeff Bauer got fired,
right,
I was the only guy that when we get fired, the AD calls me in and he says, "Hey, he says, what do we do about recruiting?" Because I was a recruiting coordinator, and we talked about that. I had guys all over the road, and I said, "Well, first thing, you should have fired us on Sunday instead of Monday, because I got the whole stuff out on the road." But we talked about it, and he said, "You got anybody you'd recommend?" And I said, "Because you worked around some guys." I said, "Yeah." I said, I'd hire Jimbo. And he said, "Well, give me his number." He said, "That's who I want." So I gave him Jimbo's number. He says, "Is there anybody else?" I said, "I talked to Charlie Strong." He said, "I really want an offensive guy."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, then I talked to Larry Fedora." And he said, who is Fedora?" I said, "He's the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State, but if you interview him, you'll hire him." And he did. Yeah.
Well, he did good. And it's, kind of like Tommy, I think he was content to, when he left at North Carolina, or even in the pros, he probably tried the pros out, and he probably knew it was ready for him to retire. Tommy was ready at 55. Me, I kind of had my eyes set on 70, but my dad went to 81 because he felt like he didn't have any influence over young people. He loved speaking at churches and speaking around the country to youth about his faith. And he always worried that if he quit coaching, he would lose that platform. And so he stayed longer than most people like a coach to stay, because I think Larry said it very closely. They want to hear a different voice. They want to hear different jokes. They want that just after a while, they want something different, and so that's kind of what happens. But I guess we ought to get back to Auburn now. And there are probably some people saying we want something different now at Auburn. I really looked at the game, and I went up. Of course, I go straight to the box score, the official box score, and I look at all the stats, and then I look at the all games composite stats. And Auburn's got some problems that are going on offensively that have been pretty apparent to people that watch the last 2 weeks. And I think it's an off week. They got some soul sort. They got some work to do in the off week to get some things corrected or get some things looked at that they have got. And because I thought it would get better at I don't know that Texas A&M was better on defense than Oklahoma, but the problem didn't get better a whole lot,
No, it didn't. And
I
just looking at this box score here, I mean, Auburn had 125 yards passing and 52 yards.
52.
And it's hard to win with less than 200 yards total offense. I mean,
no, and it goes right down to all the things that were a problem before. If you can't run, you first of all, 0-13 on third downs, 0-15 on third and fourth downs, but you're not averaging but 2.2 yards a carry. And like you said in the first half, I think what was the first half? They gave the ball to the running backs. I don't think they gave to them four times in the first half. The first half, and two of them were third and longs. So what happens is, and I think that makes it difficult. And that's why I'm saying you got to do some soul searching, because if you remember in the post game comments that Hugh made after the Oklahoma game is, I could shoot myself. I wasn't committed enough to the run. We're going to change that over the week and make sure. And then I know you and I were texting a little bit during the game and noticing that the backs weren't getting the ball. Now, Larry hit it right, folks. If you say that's easy just to get, if you don't you run a couple of times and you get 1 or 2 yards, it's hard to make yourself do it again. But, if your defense is playing well, you can do it again. And you can do it again because you almost got to. Because if you don't and you get to that situation, I want to say in the first half there were there were 4 penalties by the offensive line. There were two false starts and 2 holdings. And then I think half their sacks were in the first half, and then it just didn't get any better offensively for that offense. And now they've got to address that. I watched the videos of all the passes, and some of them were just the protection wasn't good, but the other ones he patted the ball a couple times too many times and held on to it. And then another thing that I saw him scramble one time. And he's a tough runner, but he's not an elusive type of guy that bounces around and flips and makes a guy miss. He's not going to make a guy miss that way. So he's kind of a smart runner, but he's not one of the elusive ones, And so it's not like he's easier to track down, I guess you would say, than some of those guys out there that are a lot faster and athletic sideways and things like that. And so they've got to correct that. That's going to be they've got a week before maybe a better defense out there, but one that has got some questions they've got to answer too at Georgia.
Well, and I think we've got to address, and I'm not big on it talking about anybody getting fired, but
no,
as much chatter as there is on the message board. I mean, look, it's the middle of year 3, and I think that I've been through this situation in Florida.
Yeah.
And we got fired 2.5 years in. It's not any fun. And it's a really similar situation in that now Freeze inherited he didn't inherit a lot of players. Of course, we didn't either. But Freeze inherited a real mess.
Yeah.
And so, but 2.5 years in, he's drastically improved the talent, which we did at Florida. And so we felt like, Larry and I have said before, look, we felt like we won a national championship a year earlier than Urban Meyer did, because we really felt like we were on the right path, but we were scoring points. We were just we had a bunch of young guys.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure offensively if Auburn is at this point in the year. I mean, it's going to be hard to flip. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not going to say that. I'm saying they have to flip. I'm just going to say they have to flip. You can't have those type of stats, because Georgia down the road, Alabama, Georgia, the teams you're going to play are going to have defenses similar to who you just got beat. Now, again, as I looked at the season, and I'm like a lot of coaches, we get a little envelope and we put here's what we guess is going to happen. We don't show anybody, and we definitely don't show our players, and probably not our assistants. But I've kind of circled the ones I think we have a chance to win, and once we don't. And like a lot of people, and I think we've said this before, if we can beat Baylor, we're going to be 3-0. And then if we can get one out of the next 2, we're going to be 4-1, and then go from there. Yeah. And so, all right, with 3-0 happened, a good win at Baylor. Both of these were very winnable games. Although Texas A&M could have been a worse loss.
Yes.
I mean, we had that fumble doesn't come down to the 2. or their touchdown doesn't get called back and they miss 2 field goals. This one could have been worse. Like the Oklahoma game, that one should have been a win. And I think that it was unfortunate because I think that the officials heard it. This one could have been a worse loss, I think, because of the things that happened in Auburn's favor when it came to those type of things. And so I think the key now is how do you react? As Hugh, he knows, he reads what happens. He hears what people talk about. He's no different than you and I or any of the other coaches out there. Now, how does he respond with his football team? It's way too early to let those kids lose sight of the possibilities and go from there. We've seen it happen a lot of times. We saw it happen even at Florida last year with Billy Napier after the terrible start. His quarterback got hot and he kept going. I think they're going to have to look at what they're doing. I look at it and I say, you know what? I'm going to get me 2 or 3 runs that I can hang my hat on. I got to have something that I believe in no matter what. And it probably just 2 or 3. They're not going to be 6 or 8 running plays. Well, if you got 2 or 3, that's it. Just make sure you got a week off. You can hang your hat on them, and you're going to run them. And here's what happens. And because I've called plays in the SC, you run about 3 or 4 times. You run. I don't care if you're running James Bostic or Steve Davis, and you do nothing. You do nothing for a quarter, but you're still trying to mix it up a little bit. And then by the second half, defense is a little more tired, and they're picking up 5 or 6. And then all of a sudden, by the fourth quarter, the safety's stuck in his head. He don't want to hit anybody anymore, and you're making bigger plays out of it. So I think somewhere along the line, you got to have 2 or 3. As far as the penalties, I hate to say it. I don't like to coach with negative reinforcement. I like to coach with positive reinforcement.
Right.
But I think I'd be up down in some kids right now if there's holding in practice. I'd have the officials working every 7-on-7, every inside drill, every 11-on-11, and I'd be dropping those flags with the players knowing we're going to do up downs or we're going to do laps after practice, just to get right now. You kind of most of the time when you have a lot of penalties, you want to kind of not pay too much attention to them because they come in groups. But when it happens again, and so many of it happens to the offensive line, the false starts or the holding calls, and then I think you've got to make some affirmative things to do in practice just to get their attention. And I sure as heck would have that horn going off after so many seconds or for that quarterback. If that ball ain't thrown, that quarterback, we got something to talk about, and doing though. But you got to to get that offensive problem, you've got to get your running game better. You've got to get your take the penalties away, the sacks and that, because that puts you behind the chains. And people say, well, if you do better on third downs, well, you're third and long every time. Mm-hmm. I think they were 7 times the first 7 possessions they played behind the chains 7 in a row. At one point, because of penalties, they played, and you can't get first downs when you play behind the chains. So I think all those things are things because defensively now Texas A&M got a little bit more runs than you'd want them to get, but overall defense played well enough to win again. They played well enough to win again, and the offense you have to just say, hey, offense, we got to come up. So we got this. This may be as important an off week as Hugh's ever had as far as what he's got to get done, and that doesn't mean and the key is if something were to happen and you didn't beat Georgia, play them down to the wire. Let's play great football where you walk away and you feel better. And you can, anybody can beat anybody right now. I'm telling you.
Well, and you know how Jordan Hare gets at night.
Oh gosh.
And if it's close at the end,
yeah,
I think I like Auburn chance.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, definitely. And these big Georgia games and Alabama games, and I know because I've coached in these 2 games that you've got a chance. I don't care who's favored. Doesn't really matter. It's that you're at home and you're playing at home and you've got that kind of backing behind you. Go get ready to play. And so again, I'm just in the off week. Sometimes you just got to get people well. I think right now you got to get their attention. Yep. So getting their attention this week is a lot more important than getting people well, especially offensively. It's got to be a come to Jesus meeting this week, and understand that we've got to carry our load and get that done. And so, here's the other thing that I looked at because maybe Texas A&M was that good. Well, the week before against Notre Dame, I don't know if they had a week off. Here's Notre Dame had 128 yards rushing, 293 passing, 429 total. The quarterback was 20 of 32 for 62% instead of 54. They were 7 of 15 on third downs. So that's almost 50% on third downs, and Notre Dame had 0 sacks. So what you're seeing, the team right before did not have the same problems against Texas A&M, which shows you can do things. You can get it done. This team is not knocking everybody else on their butt. Now Notre Dame lost to them, but Notre Dame put 40 points on the board and lost 41-40, and that was just the game before the game. So it's obviously you've got some motivating factors there, and some things that your players can say, hey, that we can do that. We can get that done. And Georgia gave up a lot of. I mean, Georgia didn't have a great defensive night against Alabama.
Well, Alabama looked pretty good. I mean,
it's hard to say that on the air, but Alabama resembled more Alabama of old. I almost think they got humiliated so much in that first game, and we didn't really watch them when they played ULM and played Wisconsin. We weren't watching, but they played much more physical football. I thought both teams were pretty dang physical, but Alabama mixed their offense up a little bit better.
I think the other thing with Alabama is, can they carry this on? Because last year, Alabama would look great one week, and then look terrible against Vandy, or look terrible against Oklahoma. They look great one week.
I quit trying to. Hey, believe me, I'm having to watch because of the work I do with other networks, and it's not just about Auburn. I don't know what to think. I mean, when I see teams get beat, Virginia Tech has stunk it up, and they blew NC State out of the water. Syracuse has played great. They just knocked off Clemson, and they go out there and get annihilated by Cal. They just got beat. They got 38-3. I think it was Cal. Was it Cal? They got beat. They got beat. Was it Boston College? I thought it was Boston. Was it the Cal? It was one of Cal or Boston College, but they got beat so bad. Now they lost a quarterback, and they got another quarterback playing for them. But that happens a lot. But that's a great thing, I guess. If your coach, your team can flip that thing around and get it turned, just get them focused and correct mistakes. And I was just hoping that after Oklahoma, that some of those we could see some of those things. And I think that's what you and I talked about on our show after the Oklahoma game. That all these things can be corrected. And not now. It's not that they can be, and now they have to be. We have to correct that. There's the old saying: "You get what you demand," and penalties are something you can demand that you not get. That you not get full. We call them foolish penalties. Sometimes when you're playing reckless and you hit a guy too late, but you're playing so reckless that your defense is killing people. All right, but when you have a false start, when you don't know the snap count, or when you're not locked in because the stadium's loud. Well, there's a lot of loud stadiums in our conference. A lot of them.
All of them.
All of them. I was going to say a lot of them. I was going to say 61,000 people in Starkville with cowbells is as loud as anywhere I've ever been. And I think Mississippi and Tennessee found that out last week. They had some false starts over there in Stark Vegas, And do we play at Mississippi State this year?
Not this year.
Not this year. Okay.
How do you break down the offense? I mean, how much of it is the offensive line? How much of it is the quarterback holding the ball too long? How much of it is?
I've watched it closely. I've tried to because I don't know the answer. If I was coaching, I'd want to know the answer. And I think they've got to let him quit patting that ball down. I saw 2 sacks. I thought you've got to you got to hit that back step, set and throw. And usually, if I have good rush people, it's set and throw. And if he's covered, just throw it a little bit away, throw it off, throw it over, throw it to the side, throw it a little bit off so it's incomplete if he's not open. But if you got pressure, you ain't got time to wait for something else that might come open, especially if the pocket's collapsing on you. But usually in that, it's throw it, run it, or go. Throw it, run it, or throw it away. With a good pass rush, you seldom have time except for 1 or 2 in the same area. I'm talking about a high-low receiver, a curl and a flat, or a dig and a hook up underneath. and they're really right in front of your eyes. But when your head changes directions and you start looking for that third and start patting that football, I'm getting upset with the quarterback. But I think it's about half. I think they can correct both those. But I think that's why I'm saying have a horn on every play in practice. You have a horn, and that horn goes off. And I don't care what the quarterback does after that. It wasn't nothing but a sack. It wasn't a completion. It wasn't a beautiful deep ball. It was a sack. And that's kind of what.
How much of it is lack of commitment to the run? I mean, if you're not running the ball at all, then the defense is teeing off on you, and that's not helping the quarterback any either.
No, you got to run it. I mean, the running's got to be a part. That's what I think. That's what we're saying. I think that was what Larry was saying. And it doesn't mean you're able to run it for a lot of yardage early. I think the commitment comes not from saying, okay, we have runs, but committed to running early, even if you're not getting a lot. Because now your defense has to worry about the runs. They have to play run, and your RPOs are a little bit better. The defense is sitting back a little bit, preparing for a run. And I think you got to do it, in the half. Now, when teams get ahead of you, 12, 14, 17 points in the first quarter, it starts to change what you got to do, but you don't want to panic. You want to stay with it as much as possible. There comes a point where you throw it out the window. But when you get into the game, you've got to be committed to the run and doing it both. And that's just all there is to it. Very few teams will, and I imagine Auburn's going to start facing. This is the problem. Is it because you haven't thrown the ball and you haven't thrown it downfield very much? Because I think their completion distance, their yards per completion was not all that high this past week. Is that you get people who can play you tight, play you tight and stop the run and the pass. But so you got to be
get the ball to Cam Coleman.
Well, you got him and Singleton, both those guys on the outside can play, and the great thing is what people don't realize, you don't have to throw the ball downfield. You don't have to hold on to the ball. A deep ball is thrown real quick, and it's not knocked down because it's thrown over top. It's thrown high, so it's not like it. So to me, you got to put in some what I call vertical movement routes. If you're just throwing a bunch of hitches out there or 2-yard drag routes, you're not really hurting the defense. They don't have to sit. But when you're throwing what I call vertical movement routes, a slant is a vertical movement route. You may hit it 9 yards deep, but it's running full speed north and south, or a fade route, or a takeoff, or a slot fade. Those type of things that you've got to hit there, or the seam route. They're thrown on time. There's an old saying that it's not a timing route, but it must be thrown on time. They're timing routes that you throw it automatically, either hit it or throw. But there are the other routes that are not timing routes. They still must be thrown on time. And so I think we've got to make sure we've got that. And sometimes when you sit in practice and you're not conscientious, and I've been there, I've done it. You start letting your quarterback sit until something comes open because the defensive coordinator and all the guys on the sideline are screaming for the defense, and the offensive guys are they're competing. Mm-hmm. And it isn't fair competing 7-on-7, 11-on-11 pass when you're not counting sacks. It's unrealistic if you're not getting rid of that football. And if the only way you can do that is you got to have the horn you have to have a horn blowing every 1.5 whatever seconds you're using to get rid of the football. And
you remember Ben Leard. And Mazzoni inherited him.
Yeah.
And he had a little bit of the same issue. Noel worked with him through that.
Yeah.
But he had a little bit,
Ben was right. He was getting ready to be the next starter for us, but he wasn't quite ready when we got to Ben. We had injuries that year. He was my last, but he developed. I think Noel got with him, and after a while, he got the ball out of his hands more. But he was a little bit more deliberate. And when they're young, they can do that some. They either throw it away too soon or they hold on too long. Every pass play. The biggest thing a quarterback has a hard time understanding, and that's where I enjoyed going out and spending some time with Leach. You throw the ball on time. You anticipate. You don't wait a guy to come through a window. You throw it into the window, and he breaks into it. You got to throw it and anticipate. That takes great timing between the quarterback and the receivers. And but if you don't anticipate and you wait for a guy to get open, you're probably going to get sacked before you get rid of the ball. And all those things. But I say it starts with a running game, and then getting rid of the ball, but just getting rid of the ball on time. Getting rid of the ball on time, and you got no options. And then the other thing is what I would tell against the good people. I don't care what's out there early in the game. I don't care what routes are called. if they rush the wrong lanes and leave something wide open, take it. Get your run. Run for 5, run for 8. If they're going to rush outside their lanes and give you something quick, don't sit and wait for those other routes to possibly come open. Take the first down, take the run early to make sure they stay in their lanes. And if they stay in their lanes, the offensive lineman can stay in front of them more. And so that's very important that you do that as well. And so it's kind of all those things. I'm so to say, I don't think that's the thing that as we've talked about this, you can look at about 3 things that you got to work on to make sure you solve that problem. Run the football. You got to run the football. You got to don't pat the ball, and you got to get rid of the football and run the football, and then make sure you protect a little bit better. Just do a little bit better protection. And I've seen several sacks that have come around our edge when that tackle didn't drop kick and get back quite well enough, and they got around him, and made the sack. And that's kind of difficult. I should even Auburn. I might have run the ball 4th and 1 and called it, and then thrown it. I'd have run because we weren't protecting.
Right.
So I might have run it for the first down, and then either dead the ball or whatever, just to keep the thing going. I think we had about a minute left or 59 seconds left at that point, and but with 4th and 1, it's not a. We had a lot of bad, and that play I think the guard got beat. I mean, they had a man. They brought 5. I thought they might have bluffed 1 and brought him and stepped him back, but it wasn't an unblocked defender that got to him. It was somebody that ran through in arms.
Before we run, let's hit the conference. We got probably 3 decent games. I figured we could probably blow out Kentucky, but you got Texas at Florida.
I got Texas. Here I got 4 games, and one of them's non-conference. I got Texas and Florida. And you're giving Florida 6 points on that one. And it's funny. I haven't watched Texas much. They played some bad teams, and Florida
looked great.
What's that?
They haven't looked great. At least
you're right. That believe me, Florida has an outstanding defense. They're very talented, and so I'm not. It's too early for me to pick one on that one. But I'm just saying you could say, okay, Tech's going to win, but those 6 points on there, and that's not such a bet. Now the one that's really how about. It's 6. Is it 6.5? Well, it all depends on what you go to different services and you can get your better points. And I must have gone to one of them. But Vandy, Alabama, minus 10.5 for Alabama. I like Vandy. I just think I don't care if I don't have to win. I just have to score, get beat by less than 10.5 points right now. And it might be a win for Vandy. But I think the key about Vandy is that they're for real. They came back. They didn't start out so well this past week, but they dominated the second half. And my first thoughts, I'll take Vandy and 10.5 points against Alabama because they're for real. Their quarterback knows how to play. Miami minus 4.5 against FSU. I'm not ready to go on that one yet because FSU. I don't know. I don't know how they'll respond. I don't know how they'll respond to that game, that loss they had because they've got some talent. But I'm probably leaning towards Miami right now, although it's being played in Tallahassee. But FSU kind of let me down last week. Not so much that I was for FSU. I'm thinking you're a top 10 team. Virginia, even if you play bad, you're going to win by 7, and no, they got beat.
And then Tony deserves a lot of, I know he played for your brother. I mean, Tony.
Yeah, Tony's done a great job.
Yeah.
Tony Elliott was a running back coach when I was an analyst. He played for my brother, and then I was up there as an analyst for 2 years. And I just think he's a great person, a great man, and a heck of a coach. And he took over Virginia, and then they had that shooting on campus. I think a couple of his players got shot, and it was a tough situation. So he's I think he's 4-1 right now, or 3-1. He got a chance to have a winning. I'm pulling for him. Anyway, Mississippi State. Texas A&M, is it sitting there at minus 14.5 right now? I'm grabbing Mississippi State on that one right now. I've been watching them. They're really the most improved team, I think, in the country from where they were last year. I don't think they won a conference game last year. And they're playing. They were undefeated. They already knocked off Arizona State. I think was the number 1 team in the Big 12 or one of the top 2 teams. And then they should have beat Tennessee last week. Tennessee had to come back and tie it up and then beat them. And a great game, and I like them versus Texas A&M 14.5. Texas A&M's dodged the bullet a couple times, and I like Mississippi State on that one. So 4 pretty good games, 3 in the SEC. Texas, Florida, Vandy, Alabama, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and then the old-fashioned Miami versus Florida State game in Tallahassee. Should be interesting.
Should be another great week. Good to be with you again this week.
Good to be with you. Enjoyed it. Larry Fedora, we appreciate him. We appreciate the Haley Red Family Foundation for supporting this program, and we will hopefully I'll get something on the discussion board if I see something that might be of interest. But it's an off week. We'll just have to see what's on there.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Click like and subscribe below. It really helps us out, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.